Hello and good evening.
We're doing another episode of Character Corner. We got Ryan's idea.
Yup, and we are here in some random ass place in Revere, Massachusetts to deliver you a fantastical new episode of us sitting here on a couch.
Yeah, in case you don't know where that is, that's outside of Boston.
Yeah.
It's one of those satellite cities that's right on the border.
It's literally right next to it.
There it is. Alright, so I'm here, Kyle's here, Ryan's right here.
Move your hand over there. You are. Ryan's over there.
He's right over here. He's invisible.
You can see his arm.
I casted a shield of invisibility over myself.
That's what it is.
He's right there, and we are doing, because I didn't feel like running this.
He was sitting on the remote the entire time.
Yeah. I don't want to say where that was.
So that's up his ass.
Yep.
So,
okay, so
let's get into it.
we are chilling here.
We're not doing a live play this episode. We're doing
no, because I've been drinking since I got up.
It's more that we want to just enjoy being around each other, just like physical proximity.
Oh yeah.
Where we've done games while we've been in person with each other, but that's only because it's been me and Kyle together, and that's it. And it's like, it's not that big of a deal if it's two people in the same area.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no, it still is, because it's like, even though it's like two people, it's still nice to just like be in a proximity with somebody. It's like when I first started doing D&D by myself, or not by myself, but with people like in a room, I was like, I don't know how the fuck I'm supposed to do online D&D after this. It was like doing methadone after heroin. It was addicting.
For me, I've had a worse experience. I will never do an in-person game again.
Really?
That was the most awkward thing I've ever done in my life.
Well, when it's people you don't know, it's an entirely different thing.
No, it was a group of other people that knew each other, and then they still didn't talk around each other.
Well, I mean, that's
there is a lot of dead air sometimes in my games.
It's like, I can't do that. I'm not dead air dickers. I don't listen to a bunch of solitaire whenever I'm in a spot.
Yeah, no, like because whenever I get together with my sister and her fiance and a bunch of friends for D&D, we're all very, very avid role players. So it's like we're all in our characters. We're all being who we're supposed to be. We're all interacting. We're all making jokes. And that's how I feel like it's supposed to be done, especially in role-playing games.
In case you're wondering why I keep touching my head and touching my face, it's because we've been drinking the gayest beer in the world all day.
Yes.
What do you mean?
There it is.
Johnny makes fun of it because one trans individual drank it, so now he's mad about it.
Yeah.
Forever. But then again...
It wasn't just me saying that, too.
No. It wasn't just any trans individual. It was Dan Mulaney, which makes it infinitely...
Dylan Mulvaney. It's like...
Whatever.
It's not like trans being the issue, but it's more like you picked a skeleton to advertise your beer.
It's the fact that he's a bad representation of every other trans individual.
No, it's more like you just can't pull off the look. You're just not beautiful.
I don't.
That's what it is. That's what it is. I've seen some men pull off the woman look well.
Either way,
I've seen that work.
Yeah. Either way, so it is technically a character corner, which is technically my character. It feels selfish in all honesty.
It's your character corner.
I know, but at the same time, like it feels selfish that I brought out the webcam and we had everybody out for vacation for this.
We had Ryan for the first episode. We had me for the second.
Yeah. And we have rap red and we rap red and gangs. So
Ryan, because this is your idea, do you have the first question?
I fuck.
Take your time.
I had a list of questions that I made.
Well, if it's on your laptop, you can go get
I
it.
have a list of questions right here.
That's the list of questions in the...
We'll Discord it to him real quick.
Google Drive?
Google Drive? No, it's not Google Drive. I can send this to
Just Discord it to him so he can read it.
If you need to.
We're a very professional.
So what started this whole creative writing shtick that you got? Because I know this story, but other people don't.
So, what's weird is that like way back in the day, like I was like 13, 14, and my parents gave me and my sister a laptop to share. Mm-hmm. And on this laptop, I started writing like this Naruto fanfic. And because I loved all these disparate themes that had fucking nothing to do with Naruto, I started like writing all kinds of different shit into it. I wrote like some Star Fox, I wrote some Metroid, I wrote some Mecha Solid. I just threw everything that I enjoyed into a blender.
Baby's first fanfic on 8 of it.
Basically. Yeah. And it was literally called like My Story Naruto-08 or something like that. And
we all have our beginnings.
We do, and that was years ago. But the character that I wound up playing didn't come until years later. I started building him way back in like 7th grade. And I kept building him from then. At first he was just like, stereotypical, badass 80s action hero, whatever. And I kept putting him in a bunch of fan fictions. until eventually it came to the point where I learned about TTRPGs. I started trying to adapt the character to different settings, trying to make him fit more so.
But it's fundamentally stayed the same.
He did.
Yeah.
He did in a lot of respects. But as time went on, he started to stray away from the 80s action hero. And I know a lot of people are sick of it nowadays, but sort of the dad trope of, like, he has the capability to be violent, but he is just a peaceful man in general.
Okay.
And that's something I try to follow.
What you try to do is that you're trying going for something like Rurouni, Miyamoto Musashi in Vagabond. Or
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Like that whole story's like a biography of that man's life.
More or less.
Where it's like he was this crazy homeless guy that could have been a deranged killer, but chose to be a legend instead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it starts off. Where I think the biblical story you're thinking of is the meek shall inherit the world, as in the original meaning of the word meek, where it's those who have the power to let power go.
Exactly.
Will have all the power.
And I still live by that as a principle. Is like, if you have the capacity for violence, you're a stronger man for being able to let a violent action pass when it presents itself. More so than if you were to just use it in every situation. Yeah. Mercy is sometimes stronger than justice.
It's also safer.
Mm-hmm. And what are you going to say is going to inspire where this came from? Like, why did you go for that trope in particular?
Well, I mean...
Because I noticed you have a very strong distaste for anti-heroes.
I do have a strong distaste. I mean, that's the thing.
Because we were playing Catherine today, and you just couldn't get into it.
Because I despised Vincent.
To be fair, I also couldn't get into Catherine.
It's because both of you like your heroes virtuous. You like playing fundamentally good people.
See,
because even when you were playing Sylvester, he was not that bad of a guy.
No, he wasn't.
In comparison to Vigo and... Even though we loved Ragnar, he was still a pipe bomber that mailed people bombs in their mailboxes.
Yeah.
The
nice things that Sylvester did, he felt he needed to do in a sense of moving forward.
Yes. These were ways to push the character forward. I think the reason that, I don't know if I necessarily dislike anti-heroes, I just hate how they're always portrayed. It's very single note. It's very... Guy can't make good decisions. It's not that Guy is doing bad decisions to do the right thing, which is what an anti-hero should be. It's just they're incapable of making good decisions. They just make poor decision after poor decision, and they don't even get anything out of it. They don't get any sort of personal fulfillment. They just keep digging the hole deeper, which just makes them a villain at the end of the day. I mean, there's no distinction between hero and villain if all you're going to do is just dig the trench deeper. You have to stop at some point when you're on an anti-hero arc and go, maybe I'm making the wrong choice, or I really hate doing this, but I have to because it's the only way I can get myself out of it. There's no moment of that in a lot of anti-hero plots that I have.
Me and you could not be more night and day when it came to character creation. Because whenever I've made a character, they usually stay as a bad person until the second to last session of the game.
Exactly.
Where even the most virtuous characters I make, like Yan, still never really came around to being in good alignment. They stayed neutral the entire game.
Yeah, they still strayed from their past though, because Jan was a war criminal, flat out. He was okay, I'm done with this war shit. What else is out there? I don't feel bad for it. It happened, sure, whatever. But now I'm not that guy. But okay.
And that was the part of the whole story behind Yan finding a reason to keep fighting. And then I've made other characters like Nayati, where it was fighting for the sake of fighting. There's nothing else I'm good at besides doing this.
Which is why I'm kind of excited about Ends the Road in this next part of Appalachia, is because, she's gone through her, I don't regret a single fucking thing. I'm good at what I do, and I'm going to do it until it kills me.
Yeah.
But now that she realizes that, her actions have...
We're in the introspective part.
Yeah, she's realized that her actions have a very negative effect on the people who she's supposed to be working with. That digs a new level to her character, and I'm excited to see that continue to develop through Appalachia. And I do hope that continues through Appalachia, where she's like, okay, I can't just keep fighting. I've fought everything that there is to be fought. Nothing scares me anymore. What am I supposed to do?
The violence is only ever serving the violence now.
Exactly, and she's realized that. So now we really get to build on that character and see where that takes Ends the Road. So That's what I'm excited about. That's a good anti-hero arc.
Yes.
And I do praise you for that. That is a very good anti-hero arc where you have established this is not a good person. Violence is not just the means to an end, it is slowly becoming the end. If it reaches that end, she becomes a villain.
Yes.
Yeah.
But because we were able to just pull the brakes and then change the track, now we know that, okay, she's starting to realize that this isn't all there is to life and that she has to find something else or else she's going to die or she's going to adapt.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm excited about the next few junctures of Appalachian.
So, what's the first thing you usually come up with for a character? Like the appearance, backstory, or the personality?
In all honesty, it's the soundtrack. The soundtrack is the first thing I think of when it comes to a character. Being a musician, I'm very influenced by music. I play guitar, I play bass, I grew up playing piano, and in all honesty, sometimes, believe it or not, before I came up with Cullen Moss, before I came up with Kip Miller, it was the song that a friend of mine showed me by Warren Zevon called Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner, about this guy who, fought the Congolese, fought the Bantu in Congo in 1966 and 67. And he was betrayed by his friend who was paid off by the CIA to try and kill him. But he missed, shot him in the eye, came back and killed him. And that was the original ambition for what first started as Cullen Moss and then eventually became Kip Miller, which is the protagonist of my first novel, which will be out eventually. I will let you all know when it comes out.
He's currently in publishing hell.
Yes, it's not really publishing hell. It's in the copy edit phase. It's going to take however long it's going to take. But when I thought of that, I'm like, okay, no, this has to be a character because it's written about a character. And then I slowly started putting things into it. I'm like, okay, what matches this trope? What matches this cowboy Ronin private investigator trope? Is, okay, let's get some James Bond in there, let's get some, I like thrash metal, so I'm going to put like Lone Justice by Anthrax in there. I like Blood Meridian by D Wolf, I'm going to put that in there, and slowly the character builds around that. This is the tone I want to go for, and then, MF Doom for like the setting that he inhabits, I'm going to put that in there. And that slowly builds the mood of the character. From there, I can sort of create the character from the ground up.
That's the same thing that you did with Shogun Marcus when we did Spelljammer.
Yeah, Marcus was interesting because he was his appearance was influenced by the lead singer of one of my favorite bands, which is Clutch. I borrowed the appearance from the lead singer there to make Shogun Marcus.
I said he was inspired by Joshua Tomar.
That's probably someone I don't know.
No, there's one of the hosts from Odin Plays.
The phenotype where you have all the hair on your face, none of it on your head.
Well, he does have hair. It's just like a tall widow's peak. But the song "A Shogun Named Marcus," I really love that song because I came up with like another book that I want to write eventually that's based off of the Curse of Strahd, where this Dompier gets brought back from the dead by I think his name was. It wasn't Baal, it was something else. Started with a B, but it was like the Celtic god of the dead who revived.
Beelzebub.
Beelzebub? I think it might have been.
I'm pulling up Celtic death gods as I speak.
But yeah, he revived him and said, Your soul is tormented by the plots of revenge. Go find your friend who stole your power and kill him. And along the way, he makes Shogun Marcus, who's a highwayman trying to rob people to get his family to survive.
Yeah.
And he was, the supporting character of that book, but I really liked that character. And when Johnny came and was like, "Hey, I want to do Spelljammer," I'm like, "What's that?" It's like, "It's a sci-fi D&D campaign." I'm like, "Fuck, I got a character for that. Let's do it."
It's something that should have been its own system, but because of the limitations of its creation, it had to be what it was.
I mean, the system itself is fine, but
because that was when TSR was in the toilet, and that they were well and truly on their way out. That D&D had lost its peak.
Wait, TSR?
Yeah, TSR were the people that ran Dungeons and Dragons before Wizards of the Coast bought them off of the smoldering remains of TSR.
Yeah, that's fair, but like even still, I mean, it's okay if it's still called D&D. I mean, that's the neat thing about a system is it's just a system, and people can copy and paste a system into several different settings that they like. And that, time is money in that regard, where Starfinder is just Pathfinder in space.
Yes.
Same mechanics, same game. Wrath and Glory is Wrath and Glory is just
Power by the Apocalypse, but 440K.
Exactly. So you could just copy paste the mechanics, even if the setting changes slightly or the spell list changes slightly. It's fine to have the same mechanics thereabout. Matter of fact, that might make it more approachable. Hell, World of Darkness, the entire catalog, it's all D10. You've all got these meters to keep track of. You've all got these ways to allocate points.
Yeah.
And it's okay if, you port the mechanics to another game. That's what allows you to mix splats, as we talk about a lot on the channel.
Yes.
So I like Spelljammer for the fact that it opens the possibility for more sci-fi D&D campaigns.
And you get your ass chapped to no end by the D100 system.
I fucking hate D100.
I love it.
That is
so much.
That is way too much margin of error.
Now, if we were to do the D6 system that Warhammer the Wargame does, you'd be okay with it.
I'd be okay with that because
you need to roll a 3 or higher.
There's less margin of error for that.
It's 66%, yes.
And that and the D100 is so tight that it doesn't offer a whole lot in the way of variability in gameplay. But that's a part of the reason I like World of Darkness, because I'm like, okay, as I improve, I am this much better at it. It's very similar to D&D, but it offers just enough randomization where I'm like, okay, even if I'm good at it, there's still a chance I'll fuck it up. Meanwhile, D&D, once you get to a certain level, you're just going to be awesome at everything, which is fun, but offers less challenge. Then the ball's very much in the DM's court to make the story interesting, which I'm okay with. That's another thing about when I run games that I have to admit is, I want to make a difficult challenge for my players, but what's the point of a challenge if they're not going to follow a story all the way through? This is their characters. It should be their sojourn, their odyssey. I'm not saying it should be completely devoid of danger, because then it gets boring.
Yeah.
But if you were to take a story and just add the right amount of danger, the right amount of idea that your players could die at any given minute, that elevates the plot, and it really brings in the viewers. And as much as I know it's every DM's ambition to kill at least one player, I'm kind of hoping that I don't. Just so I can see through these players.
Because you're not done with the story.
Yeah. No, I'm not. And that's the thing that I've always said. And Rappert always says, I'm like, you're such a good DM. Why do you keep putting yourself down? Because I'm not a good DM. I'm a good writer.
You're a ruthless self-critic is what you are.
Yeah, true. But who as a storyteller isn't?
That's fair, but
that's going to be you when it comes to any session that you run. Like, you're going to think, and the hindsight's always 20/20, that you could have done this instead of this.
Yeah. I think that as soon as I'm done a session, I'm like, wow, why didn't I think of that sooner? But the main thing is that I want to kill the characters, but I don't, because I want the story to be really good, because the story is what draws people in, and I want to see their stories to conclusion.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle whenever I'm building a session. Like, oh, this is going to finally twist the knife a little bit. This is going to put them on edge. This is going to drain resources that are going to get them worked up. But at the same time as I'm doing that, I'm like, did I go too far? Am I gonna halt the story dead in its tracks for the sake of difficulty? That's the constant war I'm at whenever I'm doing this, and it's such a struggle when I'm DMing.
See, even if it does halt the story, there are roundabout. Think of anime. Think of the filler episodes. There's always ways around that.
Yeah,
and I know you're gonna be able to do it.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I did add the whole midway arc as sort of like a filler plot, just because I'm like, I don't want these guys just straight drive into Charlotte, because that's going to be boring being on the road for 4 hours. I got to give them something to do, and I thought, okay, make a little break episode, introduce a problem, give the players a clear-cut problem to solve. Let them do that for 2 sessions while I build Charlotte. Charlotte's a fucking challenge. Johnny, thank you so much for giving me some more background.
Because I know this city.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
This is the major challenge is going to come in Charlotte, because none of us know anything about that city. But I'm sure I can make something up about it.
It's like, you're going to be my friend. I'll be your frame of reference throughout the entire thing, because I didn't live in that city during the late 90s, but
you knew enough about its history to make it work.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I was 3 years old at the time, so
that's fine.
I didn't know what I was looking at.
Yep. But yeah.
And Something I've brought up around Rap Red Dan, I've talked about this a few times before we did this episode with the Friday group that I run.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to characters, with me, I never run the same character twice.
Yep.
I think the only characters I've ever recycled for games have been Mirik, Yan, and we haven't done Miami by Night yet, but Nozomi.
Yes.
And those are the only 3 characters I've used for 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
You, on the other hand, use the same character for every game.
Yeah, that is something that I tend to do. But the reason that I threw him from D&D into World of Darkness, if I know the character and their habits that they're going to play, it makes it a lot easier to get to to really immerse myself in a different setting. If I think of what would I do if I was here.
Because I'm going to say that like Colt Mason is your comfort character.
He is, and I freely admit that. Yeah.
And you've got something that you like, and it's the 80s action hero where your character starts off as an everyman with wife and kids. He's put in a bad situation, and then he becomes a hero throughout the story.
Yeah, like a Charles Bronson.
That's your favorite kind of story that you like.
It really is, and I like Death Wish, but it's not my favorite movie. But the main reason that I do port characters so often, like the same character, is because, like I said, if I'm new to a setting and I don't know anything about it, it helps to A, be the everyman, and B, have a clear goal of where that character should be by the end of the game.
Yes.
Helps me introduce myself, because I do the same thing when I play RPGs. Like, I ported a character from Fallout New Vegas into the Outer Worlds, because I played this, character that's high dex, high perception, high charisma in Fallout New Vegas, and I called him Mojave Red. And so I was like, okay, that sounds good. And then I started playing the Outer Worlds, and I'm like, dude, Silver-Tongued Ranger in space, that sounds like fun. Let's get Mojave Red into space.
Yeah.
And it helped me intuit the mechanics and the story of the game a lot more if it was a character that I could more easily inhabit. I know that's not a great use of my skill set as an actor, but at the same time, it does help me intuit the mechanics a little bit better. And in a game, it's got to be a good balance between both the mechanics and the story in order for it to be a cohesive game. Because half the point of the game is to be able to play it. Yeah. And the story is, as I was saying earlier, the whole point of playing the game is to unlock more of the story. The guys that made the Metro series were, was it 4A Games, or was it? Yes. 4A Games. 4A Games understands this very well. Because in Metro Exodus, there's a part where you're on the frozen tundra and you're looking around, and after following a number of clues, you're not rewarded with XP, you're not rewarded with resources, you're rewarded with this really grim story about one philanthropist that was trying to save as many people from the wasteland as he could. Yeah. And you read the accounts as the patients slowly start dying off, as his attempts to get resources or keep them comfortable in their final days slowly dwindle down. And then you're greeted with just a single body hanging up from the rafters as he wrote his last account. And that's what I think helps when it comes to porting a character to multiple settings. Because then you get to say, okay, I know this character like the back of my hand. What I don't know is the setting. Mm-hmm. Having a constant in the setting really helps immerse yourself and helps immerse the viewer.
It also helps you get used to the rules as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you're running into a campaign not knowing, or a setting not knowing how things are done or whatnot, it always helps to have a fallback.
Exactly. That's where the constant comes into play. It's like a math equation or a chemistry experiment. You need a constant in order to solve the rest of the equation. If you know at least one thing, you can slowly break down the problem into more manageable chunks. If you know this, and that applies to just things you do in your daily life. If you know the sun is going to be out tomorrow, you'll know exactly what to wear tomorrow. And if you know what to wear tomorrow, you know what time you're going to get up tomorrow. The more you know about the next day, the better it is for you to plan for it, which is why I port characters. If I don't know anything, I'm more comfortable porting a character. But this is where, but once I learned the mechanics, you've told me, Tyler Bassett is one of your favorite characters.
Yes.
But it took me porting Colt Mason to the World of Darkness setting for me to learn the mechanics properly where I could make a character stand out as Tyler.
Like the best characters you've ever made, because I noticed this when you were doing Spelljammer, where I looked after you swapped out Shogun Marcus in the story because we had a time skip period. that before you called him Kip Miller, his name is Kip Mason.
Yes, it was.
And I reached through to Discord and I said, you are not putting this character in this game.
Okay.
Yeah, you are not doing this. I'm not getting another member of the Mason family in this game.
Okay.
And then I sat down with you, and then we worked out what that character was going to be.
Yes.
And then he had a whole new identity to the point where you made a book about him.
Yes, and it did, and I do have to credit you on that book because like Kip Miller would have just been like Kip Mason. It would have been like a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And I did have like that family lineage worked out because family is another thing that is because it's important to me. Of course, it's important to my characters.
Yeah.
And so that does actually play a part in the novel to an extent. So I do have to thank you for that.
And even when we were doing back in 2015, 2016, 2017. When we were doing that Palpatine series, that creative writing series that we were doing, where I even said it to you that
you hated Cole.
It was more that you just kept using him in scenes.
Yes.
And you had other characters that I thought were more interesting that I didn't see.
You really like Doc Eric, is who you liked.
Yeah, where it was Boris as well.
Yes.
It was Sheila that you made too, that you haven't done a narration of since.
I haven't. That's an excellent point you bring up, but I'll think of something.
Where you had all these other ideas, and I said, you can do more than what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had to come in and forcibly pull you out of a comfort zone.
That is true. And like I said, I like that comfort zone. But yeah, Ryan, what were you saying?
So you were talking about how family is a big part of you and how it is part of your character, most of your characters.
Mm-hmm.
So how much would you say that you put, I have it right here. Somewhere.
Like the people you know or the people that that have been part and parts of your lives.
How much
your characters.
do you base your characters on people you know or just parts of yourself?
Well, I hate to keep going back to him, but my uncle was U.S. Special Forces, so of course that had a bit of an influence on Colt Mason. He never spoke about his activity in Special Forces. No veteran likes to because of the memories that brings up. But the idea that and he lived a very normal life. Married, 2 kids, divorced, married again. That happens for a lot of people. So, and I admired not only his resilience, but his strength, his restraint, his calm, collective nature. He was one of the few times that a family member was made into one of the characters. But what was funny was that Cullen Moss, the antagonist of my book, who I never actually played in a game, he was inspired by my grandfather, of all people. Because my grandfather, despite being married and having 3 kids and working in an iron mill, he had a mercenary lifestyle. He went out, he drank, he smoked, he gambled, he fooled around, he did whatever. He was just a mercenary of a man.
Yes.
But for all the years that I knew him, he was just laying on a couch, smoking cigarettes and drinking whiskey. Never hurt me or said an unkind thing, but he just was sitting there grumpy and miserable all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was thinking, I was remembering all the stories that my dad would tell about his wrath, his legendary wrath, and that really helped build a perfect antagonist.
Yes. Somebody
who, despite every single vice he had, still sent home just enough money to let his 3 kids get by. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's kind of hilarious, given how much my dad always looks out for his finances, how thrifty my dad is, and that sort of played into the character a little bit too, because the whole story is about going out to find the father's money and all that, and then realizing how great is the cost of all that money. Mm-hmm. And so it is, mostly the men in my family who have influenced those characters. Meanwhile, the women in my family have always been sources of comfort. I love my mom, I love my grandmother, but then again, who doesn't? But, what's really funny is that in the book, one of the characters, I intend to have my grandmother voice this character when I do the audiobook, is Cullen's mom. Beatrice Mass, I think was her name. She was, talking about how, he's off doing his work. He's a mercenary. He likes to, fly around and fight people. That's what a man's supposed to do. And I think of that, I'm like, this is just like my grandmother. And I always think of that. And then Kip's mom, who I also have written in the book, is another like source of comfort where it's like she's willing to forgive so many of his vices, so many of his ill characteristics, because it's her son. And no matter what he does or what he says or what he fucks up, she's always going to love him. Mm-hmm. And that's really the dichotomy I have. Like, the men have a very competitive, very adversarial relationship with all their children. Mm-hmm. And the women are always there to just, like, rest a hand on the shoulder and say, it's going to be okay. I love you no matter what. So that's how the family plays a lot into what I write.
And with your character writing as well, where you made Tyler Bassett, where you have all these different songs come with the character idea first.
Yes.
Do you have anything in terms of movies or TV series or directors, any specific artists?
There was the opening scene from The Devil's Own was one of the main characteristics in Tyler Bassett, because I was thinking of Brad Pitt in that movie. He plays a member of the IRA who's the bad guy in the movie. But honestly, Tyler was mostly just Brad Pitt movies, because I really was watching a lot of movies with him at the time. I watched Fight Club, which was the original name, because Tyler Durden, Tyler Bassett. Yes. And then there was what was his name? Mickey O something. Was it Mickey O'Connor? Not Mickey O'Rourke. Yeah. It was Mickey something.
Yeah, we know what we're thinking about.
But Mickey from Snatch as, like, the pikey boxing champion.
Yes.
Was like the physicality for I didn't intend for him to suck at fighting. It's just I was still getting used to how to build a character properly. Yes. And so the fact that I made Tyler shit at fighting was just kind of the cherry on top of the character. Yes. I wanted him to be like a semi-decent fighter, but then wound up just making him another cleric, because I'm like, well, I can't like stand up to somebody with the combat proficiency of Grimm in fighting. So what if I make him like, just like a loudmouth, hot shot, but he's really good at he's really good at channeling his gnosis.
Yes.
Even though like he's had a fucked up past and he's not really good at talking to spirits. And I think it's the fact that I made him so shit. Despite his his action hero affectation.
His whole shtick is that he's a loser. But he still gets up and tries the next day.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And persistence is another thing that I really admire in a character. And I keep thinking of the scene that I intend to write where, Colt's talking to somebody and they're trying to lecture him about nihilism, where it's like, no matter how many times you try, you will lose and you will continue to lose. And to which he takes a careful drag of the smoke and he goes, you're right, I might lose, but so long as I live, I can get up and I can lose again and again and again and again. But I can also try again. And every time I try again, I'll get a little bit better at it. Until eventually there will come a point where I may never lose again.
Yeah.
And that's what I like more than anything. More than the action heroics, more than I like, the people that...
It's the motivation itself.
Exactly. Like, because I don't like to give up either. Like, everybody, whenever somebody tells... it's very much the male psychology of reverse psychology, whenever somebody tells you shouldn't or can't do something, I just want to do it more.
Yeah.
Whenever somebody tells me, it's like, oh no, you can't go to study at a college out of state, I'm going to do it. I fucked it up, but I did it, and I can say I did it. You can't publish a novel. Fucking watch me.
Where a big difference between me and you when it comes to characters is that the metamorphosis of a character is what I always go for first.
Yes.
So I want to see where do we start and how do we end.
Exactly.
Where the characters I make, the stories I make are tragedies and rebirth stories.
You do make a lot of very dynamic characters, and that is one thing I've yet to truly grasp how to do.
Where my characters usually don't have happy endings, and if they do have happy endings, it's because they lost a lot of stuff on the way there.
My characters I just pull out of the ether, and I'm like, yep, this will do it.
It's like, I want to make a character that'll just kill anything he touches.
Sylvester came to you in a dream.
Yep, a fever dream.
It's okay. Appalachia was revealed to me in a dream.
Because by the time that we've gone into Ridgecrest Appalachia, Liz the Road has lost everything fundamentally.
She has.
That she started with.
Yeah.
The one person that she has is Autumn leaves, and she still doesn't have that same relationship she used to have with them.
She technically is Ham, but since she killed Jen, that's kind of fucked that
and
up.
And she knows that there's not going to be a man in this baby's life.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be a way that she's going to live happy where the best my characters get is bittersweet.
Yes.
And that's it. Well, your characters tend to like start the same and then end the same, but it's only because they endure so much. Where
exactly.
You want to see like what you can put your characters through before they change.
Exactly. I want to at the end of a story, like I've never actually like played Undertale with her, but I knew enough about it where it's like, you know, you start at the start of the campaign, you look in the mirror in Toriel's house,
and then you say like, "Oh, look, it's you."
It's you, and then at the end, after like 3 or 4 playthroughs. Despite everything, it's still you.
Yes.
And that's what I really love about my characters. That even though they're even though they're static, I still like the fact that, you know, they hold on to all that pain, but they still manage to crack a smile despite it.
And would you say it's more like how you see people as a whole, where do people stay the same in your eyes? Is there any point where a man changes, or do you stay the same throughout your entire life?
I think it all depends on the experiences of the person, because like I've seen some people change. Mostly for the better, some people for the worse. Like, I've seen friends that have sworn they were going to be teetotalers their entire life, and next thing I know, they're doing shrooms and Molly and shit.
Yeah.
And then I've had other people who are just the most mild-mannered individuals on the planet, never done a wrong thing in their life. Next thing I know, they're building their own rifles, building their own motorcycles, and drag racing at the track, and I'm like, fuck yeah, dude, get it!
Yeah, because for me, it's like whatever like whispers in your ear can change you within a single day.
Yeah.
Where I feel like at any point your life can change and it takes one day to do it.
Yes.
And that's what heavily inspires whenever it comes to me making characters.
Yes.
Because I've had instances in my life where, for example, me finding God.
Yeah.
Where it took one day of me doing serious introspection for me to get my life back on track.
You were thinking, it's like, okay, what the fuck am I actually doing wrong? And then eventually you realize, like, I
just got like sick of being so hateful and angry towards everything.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't take it anymore because it was just weighing too much on my shoulders.
Like I'm not a combative individual by nature. You know this. I don't like fighting with people. I know that like if push came to shove, I would throw, but I generally tend to think of like people don't want to conflict with each other, and you know I generally try to look towards people as if they're just trying to go about their lives. They're just trying to get from day to day. And I want to help people if I can. I want to stay out of people's way if they want to. I don't want to have to force anybody down a path they don't want to be at. Because life's already too short and life's already too difficult to force people down roads they don't want to be on. So I'm thankful for any opportunity that I can to help people, and I'm also thankful that, you know, people are willing to accept help and that people listen. So, but at the end of the day, it is that fundamental faith, not just in God, but in all of men, that, you know, we are all willing to help each other at the end of the day, even in the most dire circumstances. So.
We talked a lot about characters.
Yes.
What's a character that you've written that you wish more people knew about?
Ooh, I kind of wish more people knew about Marcus. Well, I mean, I never introduced Marcus, and I never really.
You played him for a small portion of Spelljammer.
I played him for a very small.
He was around for the first 4 levels, and then he got swapped out with Kip.
Yeah, but you know, Kip's going to eventually get his when his novel gets published, and there's going to be like a whole trilogy. I've started writing the second book. And, you know, I'm going to start writing the outline for the third once I finish the draft for the second. But Marcus, sure, even though, like, I was inspired by a bunch of Clutch albums, the main thing was...
Spew.
You okay?
Do it.
Huge acid reflux. It's making me cough.
Do it.
Oh, good. Anyway. But yeah, so characters that... So, Marcus was meant to be like at first just this highwayman, based off the song "Book, Saddle, and Go."
I hear him talking to the room.
Oh, it's okay. It happens. But yeah, "Book, Saddle, and Go" was the first one. You know, Pinkerton man, murdering bastard. I'm gonna get even with you. I was like, okay, yeah, that's a good start for that. A shogun named Marcus. I had a picture in my mind of just like him being in an arena with like a sawed-off shotgun and like a handgun.
And you had a moment like that where after I had the air people take over.
Yeah.
You had a small scene, and the whole joke behind it is that was a standing ovation of no one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you're shouting it out at, but you still made the proclamation anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what I said in that sentence.
It was more like a confirmation to yourself that you were going to do this.
Well, the thing is that like he was putting forth good points, but I didn't really have like a response to it except fuck it, I'm gonna kill him because he was a chaotic neutral character.
Because we started that campaign with a nuclear threat.
We really did.
Was your first 4 levels that stopped this ICBM from being launched?
And he's like, "Oh, well, you're taking over our land. Can you really justify that?" And I was just kind of growling at him, like, "Oh, I'm gonna show you why I deserve this land."
Yes.
And so then I was playing a ranger, but Johnny was kind enough to lend me a sneak attack damage on that.
Yes.
I snuck up behind him, put a freaking bolt in his chest, and gunned him down in the base.
Yeah, because that was one time where I started getting really frustrated with D&D 5e as a game, and I craved other game mechanics.
Yes.
And I'm happy that DC 20 is right around the corner where we can finally get around to writing fantasy stories. Because I have ideas with them, and Sean has already written out what the plot of that game is going to be with me.
Yes.
And it's just that I'm so sick to death of how limited my action economy is in 5e.
I'm not worried about the action economy. It's just like I tend to prefer sci-fi to fantasy, which
and same thing like with the way you run games too, where like you as a player, because I've said it to other players, you cannot live in a world where the skill check is not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That you want the skill check to be a thing in your games.
Yeah.
Where the insight check, the perception check, you want that. That's why when we played D&D 2nd Edition, and you found out that wasn't a thing, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had no interest in continuing D&D.
When we played Council of Worms, right?
Yes.
See, like we were still rolling for that like it was 5e because the mechanics were so ingrained into
and
us.
it's because like D&D 2nd Edition says, figure it out yourself, where it wants you, the player, to know how this is done, instead of the game doing it for you.
Yeah.
Where instead of me saying, okay, you're over here cooking out open flyer, roll survival, and then you do that survival check. It's describe to me what you're doing at the campfire, and then I'll tell you how good it comes out with what you have on you.
I suppose, that makes a lot of sense because like that's the one thing that bothers me. What's really funny is that I'm playing a Storm King's Thunder game with my sister, her fiance, who's running the game, and a couple of friends of mine.
Yes.
Colt never intended to be a chef, but because I cooked consistently for 2 weeks at every campfire, I got the chef's feat.
Yeah, that's what
so I started, and because it's based off your wisdom modifier because of survival.
Yeah.
I just became Chef Gordon Ramsay, which was really funny.
So after you spat your pancreas out, do you feel better?
Yeah.
There it is.
But either way,
I'm in peak condition.
We're going to go into the bathroom. There's going to be a pull of gore in the toilet.
But the thing is that like the thing that I do like, and I'm a very good DM for this. Cade's a very good DM. When I do roll for survival, I thankfully freaking knock on wood that I do.
That's not wood.
Freaking wherever there's wood at, there we go.
There we go.
So I've been rolling very good for survival checks on because I have proficiency with chef's tools. I got a +3 in wisdom, but I still like the idea of that. Even if you cook really well, you can still fuck it up. Because that's always going to be something. Even the smallest minute chance that you can fuck up something is still it's realistic. And I understand that Gabe Newell had that whole speech of like, oh well, that's not realistic. But realistic isn't fun. But still, it's the chance of failure that makes it a challenge, and it is the challenge itself that is fun. So
now between you being a storyteller or a player, which one do you prefer?
Player. Fuck storytelling. Storytelling fucking sucks. It's so fucking stressful. Fuck storytelling.
I swear you're putting more stress on your shoulders than you really need to.
Fuck storytelling.
I absolutely agree.
Where Sean says that too, like you're putting too much pressure on you.
I understand that, but like
you are. I 100% agree with that too. You are. You just need to.
I am a very.
Confidence.
I will say I am a very nervous person.
Where if we handed you, say, Rite of Passage from D&D from World 20th Edition,
I would still stress over that.
That's a whole story that's written out.
I would
already.
still stress over that.
Where I think it's more like your self-criticism at the end of the day.
Well, no, I'd like even if you handed me the Rite of Passage, my first thought was like, okay, I need to build every single. I need to make it. I need to make it feel like you're there.
That's the mentality that both you and Johnny have that I do not have.
It's the same thing when I'm running Disco by Night on Fridays, where I still have NPCs in the game that I made session 1 that I still haven't introduced.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't feel like the right time to introduce it to a story, and I don't think it's ever going to be the right time.
Yeah, but see, the thing is...
My NPCs come on the fly, like, boom.
Yeah, it's there.
It's all random. Like, I'll go through and...
You pull it out of the ether.
Yeah, literally. You'll ask me, hey, who's the barkeeper? I'm like...
Well, for you, it's entirely improv, where I remember when you were making Grimm, you asked me, what is the meta build for Werewolf?
Yeah.
And then you made the build first, and then the character evolved out of that build.
Absolutely.
But that worked really well in your favor for the setting, though.
Yes.
Because then you realize, like, okay, I have none of these skills, but I have a character that's kind of fucking them up. But I also need to reassert myself as the alpha, so I need to do this.
Yeah, where anytime you're in a situation where there was combat, you had it covered.
Yeah.
But when it came to anything outside of that, that's where the challenge came in.
That's where I trusted my pack to do things.
And then I gave you the challenge with Freya Sanders, where I want to give you a character that you care about, and your objective goes from saving yourself to saving her.
Yeah.
And then I made that a mutual thing where she can save you as well.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And then that led to probably the best NPC in that game.
It really did.
True.
There's a Grim. I think Johnny had a poll, and they voted. Grim was the favorite character.
Oh, well, he was second.
No,
Chico was number 1.
Chico was number 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Chico, because...
Well, Ryan's so charming. It's really hard not
more
to.
like, whenever you have a Wonderland setting like that, Alice stands out as the best character.
Yes, that's true.
And Chico was our Alice for that game.
Yeah.
Ryan is great at playing the straight man, and he's also just like a really charismatic individual. Because like I love Vigo as a character.
Yeah.
He is like I hate anti-heroes, but I love.
He wasn't even a hero. He was just a straight villain.
I love comically evil villains.
It's more that he wasn't ashamed of anything he did.
I know. That's part of the reason I like Ends the Road is because she's unashamed.
Yeah.
But the only problem is that
like the main inspiration behind that, because a lot of my characters, a lot of my ideas and stories are very anime inspired.
Mm-hmm.
The direct inspiration for her was Yujiro Hanma from Baki, from Grappa Baki.
Yeah.
Where you know that character, Ryan?
Yeah.
That's the world's strongest man, and him being the world's strongest man, he stops seeing consequences for his actions.
Yep.
And if he wants to do something, he does it.
Right.
And he's got this big dick energy whenever he does anything. And I said, well, what if we put that character but in a more realistic setting?
Yep.
It's like if you had the sideways facing Chad as a real person, nobody would want to be around him.
And that's exactly what's happened.
Yeah, that's what happened with
So it worked
because you're so wrapped up in yourself and your own energy that nobody wants to associate with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Back to the question, but no, fuck storytelling. Like, I get it. I stress a lot about it. And I have a lot of ambition when it comes to storytelling that, like, I wind up overbuilding one part and then not anticipating the player characters because, like I said earlier, I'm a great writer. I'm a terrible storyteller because I like writing the story. I like knowing where things are going to go. Like I said...
Is it more that you don't expect the player to go the avenue that they're going down?
It's not just that. It's that, like, I'll think of something because, like, with the whole side plot of, like, the Serpent Brotherhood, that went better than I thought it did, which I'm thankful for.
Yes.
But, like... Even every other encounter, like the Mountain Menaces, the fucking Black Spiral Hive, all of that went so far off the rails. I expected them to be strong enough to be villains throughout the duration of the game.
Well, that instead plays into Incerode's character, where the Black Sparrows folded like chairs.
It did,
and then we'll start to worry about the worm anymore. If this is what I can expect from the Black Sparrow Elders, then what's there to be scared about the apocalypse?
I know, and that's why I feel like I fucked up as a DM because
but it leads to a different direction with your story.
It does,
yes.
But you know, I'm still worried. Like, was my story not it was my lack of experience when it came to building a compelling villain.
Like the more dice typically equals stronger character, but at the same time, ones exist.
Which is why I had after Enns had sex with Matt Griner.
Yes.
Why I had his soul like sort of influence her dreams because I thought that's the one place she can't fight to defend herself.
Yes.
And then I used that as an avenue to sort of build the relationship between her and Ham.
Where she finally starts getting over romanticizing and fantasizing about her rapist.
Exactly,
yes.
Exactly. And that's why that whole thing went on great.
And then you have the whole avenue for character regression, because now that Ham's out of the story, she might go back down the path again.
Maybe, yeah. Especially now that she's killed Jen and all the hounds are friends with Jen, and they're going to think, what the fuck happened to Jen? Why is she dead?
I had
you have to lie your ass off if you want to survive in Charlotte.
Given that I have a charisma of 1 and manipulation
you
of 1.
good luck, homie.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
To go on to a different question.
Yes.
Do your characters ever surprise you or take the story in an unexpected direction?
It's for Tyler and Kip, yes.
Yeah.
But like I said, for the characters that I try to use as a constant to gauge a setting, I mean, it's my character, I know them pretty well.
So we'll negate those ones for now. But for like the characters like Tyler or not Tyler.
For Kip, yeah.
Kendi or even any of the.
Because I played. Kendi is technically a port of Kip, so there was less to surprise me there for that one there because. I will say, though, Kendi was a lot more smug, a lot more self-assured than Kip was, but I was still happy to play as him because, Russia was a bleak setting, and Kendi was slowly getting his power stripped away from him, but even then, he was willing to, stick to it and keep his chin up despite everything. That's that trope coming into play is the persistence of the protagonist.
Yes. And then you had your soul ripped away from you, and
I was pissed about that. I'm not gonna lie.
In DMs, you were asking me for a separate character, but I said no. Let this play out the way that
I'm like, this was kind of bullshit.
I put you in strangleholds throughout my games.
Yeah.
But I never put you in a situation that you can't get out of.
Yeah. But even still, I was like, this kind of fucks up his character. I'm like, how the fuck's he supposed to come from? And I did eventually. Thanks for the Celeste Cars.
Like a second question. Well, do you have your character arcs planned in advance with where you want to go with your character?
Not necessarily, because I am used to static characters. But the thing that I liked about Tyler is because I didn't know the only goal I had for Tyler was to survive.
Yes.
That's the only goal I had for him. And so how he went about that was entirely out of the road. But for Tyler specifically, because I made him kind of shit, and because he was just kind of decent at everything, it worked very much in his favor for a dynamic story.
He played into Fiona's trope of always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Basically, yeah. You said to me, Tyler's more the chick than Elmira was in that story.
Yeah, because Elmira, whenever she went to a combat encounter, she would win every fight she went to solo.
Yeah. She was very meta-builded as well.
But then anytime Tyler went to a fight, even if he had backup with him, you could assure that he would lose.
I always got my ass kicked in that game, which was a little bit frustrating, but I also didn't have all the charisma to back it up, which was a little disappointing.
Well, his charm carried him as a character. Well, and he still had votes when he did a popularity poll.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But it was still fun to play him because he was a very complicated character with a really rough background.
He never got what he wanted either.
He never did.
He had that big man crush on Wrath of the Storm in the game, and then I said, well, just because the character crushes on the character does not mean that British Champions are paying out.
Yeah,
because Wrath of the Storm hated him.
Oh yeah,
and he said that he got so disgusted with him in particular that he quit the pack.
He did, and but the thing is, that was after Elmira had that whole speech of this is an us thing. I thought it was oh shit, I actually need to take some fucking responsibility.
Even with him, not getting the girl at the end. Played into that character.
It really did, but
he's the guy always is going to get his shit pushed in, but he's still going to try.
Yeah, and hell, that wasn't even a straight out no. That was a not right now.
Yeah.
That was, and to Tyler, that was better than everything else he had.
We just met 4 days ago, and you already want to have a knot.
To be fair, we've almost gotten killed together multiple times.
Why do you think this is talking like a Disney movie? That's not how this works.
Exactly, but and I wasn't thinking in terms of that. I was thinking in terms of how long the game had gone on.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, it's okay, wow, we've been playing this game for a minute. Let me put the ring on it, and that was a realistic response from Elmira.
Yeah.
But I think in the character it was okay, he was thinking, we almost died. Mm-hmm. I've been trying to keep you alive through this, even though I've been almost dying. But like you said, this did actually play into Tyler's character very well because he never got what he wanted, but Elmira not saying no was the closest he'd ever gotten
to a success.
So he wrote that as much as he could. He's like, okay, that's not a no. If you change your mind, the ring is right there on the table.
Yeah.
And so he's willing to like, okay, cool, whatever. I've still got a girlfriend. That's enough for me.
Yes. And even though you didn't really rank beyond rank 1, because you still ended the game rank 1.
We'd rank 2, actually.
Yes.
Because we all got promoted to Foster at the end of the first season.
Wait, I helped defeat an Antediluvian, rank 2.
No. We got promoted to rank 2 in like the first 2 episodes, and we were rank 2
and that was it. You still have to go through the whole renown system where defeating Malkav still wasn't enough to
That is kind of... But it was the end of the game. I can't say much about that.
But it still played to it. But I think that out of all the characters you played, I think Tyler Bassett has been my favorite.
I think he is probably one of the best that I've played so far. I would love to play him again.
Now, whenever it comes to you being a player in your games, do you like player interaction or player and NPC interaction?
Player interaction.
Yes, because that's what I tried doing in my games. Because I have moments whenever I run D&D or World of Darkness games where I say, okay, my players are interacting with each other. Okay, we're not going to progress the game until you do interact with each other.
That is
and
why
I'll pull out. I have 2 different tables that I roll for conversations between characters.
That is why I'm so thankful for the pre-established relationship between Ends the Road and Autumn Leaves. And also because Cleft has the daredevil feat, he always wants to like kind of prod. He always wants to try to get too close to the fire. He likes to prod at the bee's nest, which is great for him in Ends the Road. Because she's always talking shit about him. He's always, getting mad. And because...
It's this Kessel's virgin that doesn't contribute anything to combat and needs to rely on guns instead of fighting like a guru.
Yeah. And also because, you have the Philodox relationship with Cleft and Autumn Leaves. That brings me so much joy just to, see somebody who's a Philodox in name only, basically, even though he acts more like a Ragabash, which is really, really funny.
Yes. He should have been a Ragabash.
He should have been, but,
it's almost like the rules have been reversed, where the Lupus is the pin pusher.
Yeah.
Relationships.
It all, even though the party has the just met trope, them just met at the tavern, even though it was them barreling through the barreling through the portal at Taggart Lake.
In the story, looks at Cleft Reed and says, "You can turn this around. I know you can stop. Just put the guns down. You can fight like a guru. Do it."
Yeah.
And then him refusing to do what she wants is what irritates her so much.
The moment he tries to do that too, as evidenced in the last one, the moment he tried to do it, he failed at it. And he's like, I'm just going to go back to what I know, and that's fucking guns.
It's to a point where no matter what Clef does, Insor's going to have an issue with it.
Exactly, and that's what I think. And matter of fact, that plays into Clef's character too.
I like that too with some groups of characters, like main cast, where not every member of the main cast needs to get along with each other.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I know you aren't a big fan of JoJo, but what I really like about Part 5 in particular is the relationship between Giorno and Leona Bacchio.
Right.
Where Leona Bacchio does not like or trust her Giorno. And when you look at Giorno's character, where it's this 15-year-old kid that came from this broken home background that openly talks about wanting to usurp the Mafia Don, you have every reason not to trust him.
Yeah, you're full of shit. Get the fuck out of here.
Where to Leon, the Mafia is his life, and that's the only avenue he has to go down by that point.
Yes.
So this guy who's brand new off the street is trying to tell him how to do his job.
Yeah.
And then that's where the conflict stems from.
Yeah, and I do like that adversarial relationship, and I'm hoping for especially when we get to Miami eventually to have more of an adversarial buddy cop relationship built off of that. Yeah. And I know, again, it's selfish of me to talk about this, but I do write about Colt and Colt and Wrath of the Storm, just because it's 2 grizzled old veterans with just...
You like Wrath of the Storm as a character. Where
I really love Wrath of the Storm.
In Ranch Cross New York, he was a guy that was past his prime, but still, his trust issues and his paranoia, he could not trust the generation in the hands of the next generation.
No, he couldn't.
Yeah.
And that's what made it really great. But, like, I'm thinking just, like, again, Colt's very much a fish out of water protagonist in that setting. Yeah. And to have, like, this guy who's just like, okay, I have a rifle, they're bad guys, I can shoot them to save people. Mm-hmm. And then this guy who's so deeply ingrained in every ounce of the supernatural world, looking at this random fucking gangrel and going, what the fuck are you doing, you jackass?
You don't know what you're talking about, you don't know what you're doing, you're going into every situation headstrong, and yet you keep surviving off of beginners like alone.
And if you can't be good, be lucky.
Yeah, right?
That's it.
But yeah, it is very much the character interaction, because that's the same thing about IRL games, is because when I'm playing Storm King's Thunder, it's the character interaction that gets the party going, because, you know, how that party is laid out is I'm playing Colt Windriver, which is, you know, like the D&D version of Colt, because, you know, that's the character I wanted to play for that game.
Yeah.
My sister's playing this drow who's like 500 something years old.
Yes.
He's, you know, been enslaved, he's been a prostitute, he's got like this illegitimate relationship with this other person that got him kicked out and tortured from his clan.
Yes.
And you've got Vorak Woundwalker, who's this Goliath, who was, you know, abandoned by his tribe, sold into slavery to the Hill Giants, escaped, and then you've got Mael, who's a Solara, an Aasimar, who, you know, his father was a Solara, married a human. She was brought to Mount Celestia. And so he's escaped from his basically being secluded in his mom's attic to finally explore the world for the first time. And like all of us are such disparate themes in our characters.
Yeah.
But we all have just enough in common where we can all interact. For Colt's already pretty arced out at that point. He's the grizzled veteran. He is like, I just want to go home, be with my wife, cook dinner, and attend my sermons. That's all I want to do, but the Giants are fucking everything up, and these seem like the only people who can help me right now.
Yes.
And Vorak's like, okay, I need to take revenge, but I need to stay alive to do so. Mm-hmm. And I also have no idea how to interact with regular society. And then you've got Roken, who's like, I know all of the ins and outs of all parts of society because I've been around this long.
Yeah.
But I also don't know much about the surface, and I also don't trust anybody either. Mm-hmm. And you've got this Aasimar who's like, wow, this is a beautiful world, but do I really know anything about it? Mm-hmm. And that's sort of like the glue that holds us all together as characters, is that like, we all know enough about different parts where we kind of need each other, and we've been around long enough where we've been together long enough where we've started to gel and trust each other, to really act as a unit. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad that sort of come to pass to an extent in Rage Across Appalachia. Mm-hmm. But what really sold Rage Across New York is the Pac Cohesion in that story.
Right.
Yeah. What is your favorite in-character moment that you've had at a table?
That's a fucking hard one.
Yeah. I knew it was going to be.
I'm going to say one of the moments that hit me the hardest. There were two of them in Rage Across New York. One was where you know, Wrath of the Storm was dying, and Tyler was trying everything he could think of to try and save him.
I even have a whole fascinating bargain with the worm.
And the worm was trying to get into it, and Tyler was like, he wanted to save Storm, but he also knew that like it would destroy him if it did. So he was like having this whole breakdown where it's like, I want to save him, but I don't want to curse him, but I want to kill the worm, but I really want to save Storm. And so that was like a whole big moment with him, and I was really getting like choked up. I'm like, I want to save him, but I don't know what I can do to do it.
And eventually you ran out of options, and Chico had to come in for it.
Well, no, I had a fucking seizure. You know?
True.
It was that.
Yeah, you got so stressed out and you had a seizure.
Yes. It was that, and in Miami, or not Miami, Las Vegas by Night, like the unsung hero of this channel is when Catherine had ghouled herself with Tremere blood and was trying to kill him.
She became young blood.
She became young blood and was trying to kill Colt. Colt was fully prepared to just let her kill him. And I honestly, hats off to you for being ballsy enough to kill him, because I'm like, Go ahead, kill him. This would be a fitting end to him. Kill him.
And I was trying to do the rolls for it and everything, but everyone else at the table joined in to try to help you with your questions.
That warmed my heart so much,
Yeah.
especially Sylvester. You just dominate on her.
And like even Vigo Corinth came up and did something about it.
Yeah, he like changed her appearance so the IA would.
Surprisingly,
Yeah, I was amazed at that everybody stuck their neck out for me.
Yeah.
And like the fact that everybody recognized that like Colt is about ready to die, and I had another character prepared.
Yes.
It would have been another Tremere that could have interacted with Tabitha. That could have been a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But the fact that they were 100% willing to step up and help their party member,
Yes.
and the fact that you were willing to kill Colt, the fact that it was one roll away from Catherine, like literally Colt had Catherine's head with the gun, put up to his head, just like, end it. I don't want to be this way if it's going to cause you this much pain.
Yes.
Just let it end. And then I hear Sylvester try reaching out to her with one last word with Dominate. And
it wasn't with Dominate, it was with a merit that I had.
Yeah. What merit was it?
It was a one-time use, and it was like
Voice of Reason.
Voice of Reason,
Yes.
that's what it was.
And so Colt said a couple of other words, and then she lowered the gun, and I just had to sit back in my chair and just let the pressure roll off. Like, oh my God, the whole fucking party saved me.
Yeah.
Everybody came out to help me.
And that meanwhile, Sylvester's still bullying in the background.
He was, and
that whole time he was bowling. And
that was a whole conversation. Colt just like sat down because he knew Sylvester was a family man. He was like, "How did you do it?
Let Sylvester
How did you get off?
You guys still talking?
Yeah." Yeah, and because Colt was like brand new to being a Canine at that point in time.
What really,
Colt,
what really sold the interaction too is that with that, you weren't all Sabat, you weren't all Anarchs.
Yes. No, we were brought together out of far circumstances.
One Camarilla, one Giovanni, two Anarchs, and two Sabat.
Yes.
All in one place because of circumstances that went that poorly.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why it really sold that whole cohesion, because you really did need each other to survive.
And that, I think, was like the best part of that. And it warms my heart thinking about that.
Because Sean still tells me that's his favorite game that he's ever been in.
Yeah, Las Vegas by Night.
And
Absolutely.
Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino were two people that have really influenced my storytelling.
Yes.
And that felt like a Tarantino movie the entire time.
It did, and that's part of the reason I love, because we had like that big shootout at the.
I also saw specks of Michael Bay.
Yeah. And the whole, like, I think it's like the Stilt Casino, the one that's got the big tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you had that massive gunfight towards the end.
Oh yeah.
Where
we had that one.
You had two fake vampires that were actually from Mori.
And we were at the Still Casino.
Well, that was technically your final boss, because the whole fight with Malkav was unwinnable on the surface.
Yep.
There was a way you could have pulled a win out of it, but it was a puzzle encounter and you failed the puzzle.
We tried everything, because Cole was like, because I know Ragnar was trying to use Premonition to get some insight on it.
Yeah, where it's an antediluvian, you're not going to win the fight.
No. We should have just killed Isaac Jekyllstein, but we didn't.
Yeah, like figuring out that you can target the host instead of the antediluvian himself.
Yeah, but then again, it was our failure to figure that out as vampires what made this podcast possible.
And like I've been like pushing it the entire time, like getting you to think outside the box when it comes to your characters.
Oh yeah.
Where a lot of the characters I've made for you have been puzzles.
Yes.
Where same thing, we were running Mystic Odyssey of Theros where we first met Ryan, where I put that like a CR-18 Lion Man in front of you. And
Jesus Christ, yeah.
And the whole thing was you're not supposed to deal damage to the lion himself. The environment around you deals damage to him, and you need to figure out how to do that.
Yes.
That was a rough fight.
I remember you did that in Theros when we were fighting like the two deities. We had to like destroy 6 pillars or something.
Where like you were not supposed to directly engage with Cultists and Grufix.
Yeah.
And that was the whole shit behind that.
Yep.
And when it comes to you acting as characters, you do a lot of voice acting work. When it comes to this. Well, with me, a lot of stuff I do with characters is that I'll change the way I'm sitting, or I'll change where my shoulders are to convey my characters. I don't do camera work with it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want my face up on screen while we're doing the Roll20.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not running out the RAM like crazy or anything.
Yep.
But for a short 2-hour game that I do on Tuesdays was another Spelljammer game. where when I'm doing different characters there, I'll do different physical inflections to reflect what character I'm playing as.
Yes.
Because I have a whole character with a brick, where he's a spoof of Link from Legend of Zelda, where he's this guy who's a hero in name only. Like, everybody thinks he's a hero, but he's not.
Yep.
And I'll do, like, little inflections while I'm speaking as him. Yeah, in order to, like, pretend to be that. And when he kind of, like, same thing where he's in different situations, because part of this spoof is that instead of having a crush on Zelda, he has a crush on Ganon instead. And so whenever he interacts with him, I'll start like reaching behind my neck, like I'll start biting my lip when I speak in his voice.
Yeah.
Like to show that. And it's part of the whole joke that
That's
goes into it.
That's really fucking funny.
While with you, it's all in the voice whenever you do your character.
It is all in the voice, yes. Like, a lot of people, even back in high school, because I was in Mary Poppins, one of the first, like, plays I was in.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
Yes. I'm Mary Poppins, yo! One of the first plays I was in was Mary Poppins, and everybody, even though I was just, like, an understudy, would come to me and ask me, he's like, Kyle, how do you do all these voices? And so I was like, well, I watch a lot of movies based off of these, because, well, that and when I was a kid, my dad did the same. My dad has an incredible voice acting talent himself because he has a very distinct voice and he can change it however he likes. Like doing Donkey from Shrek, being Eddie Murphy was one of the ones.
Hey, come on, man!
My dad could do it perfectly and he would just crack me and my sister up all the time. And so my sister would do Minnie Mouse and I would do Mickey. I mean, I can still do Mickey. I'm the mascot of an evil corporation. I can do that all the time. And my family would all like go around in circles practicing like all of our different voices. And I feel like that helped me out a lot in how I would portray characters. But, you know, I would eventually like slowly collect accents from all the films I watched, all the songs I listened to, and all the people I'd meet. And that I would eventually build up like a repertoire. And now it sort of turned into like a bar trick to me to go up to somebody and start talking one accent. I was like, whoa, you're British? And I'm like, no. Name 3 accents. And
you tricked Greed in the server to thinking that you actually were Irish.
Yeah.
Was it Greed or was it?
It was Greed.
Oh,
you tricked him into actually thinking that you were Irish.
That was so fucking funny. It was hilarious. I'm going to tell you a story. I was dating this one chick, and she is a friend of hers that worked at the British Embassy. I went out to dinner with her and a couple of her friends, met at this game bar where we were like playing board games and shit. And, you know, I was on the train down to meet them, and we were talking like the first time we went on a date. I'm like, well, I can do all these voices. Do you want me to do any of them for your friend? She's like, my friend's British, do Scotch. I'm like, oh, done.
Yes.
So I showed up and I, walk over to the table. I was like, hello, Harold, are you there? And I didn't put on Colt's voice. I put on just like a general Irish voice is best as a kid, general Scots voice is best as kids. And the bloke looks at me and he goes, wait, really? British? He's like, really? Scottish? I said, hey, Glasgow. Kyle, how are you? Good to meet you. And he was just baffled the whole fucking... And I kept it up. And I kept it up the whole fucking evening. And we were sitting there, we played like a whole round of Carrots Against Humanity. And I just kept it up like this for all of it. I remember, and I really sold it the one time, just because it was like, alright, I'm about to go to the pub and get me another pint. Would anyone else like some? And so I got 2 other people's drinks. And so I went over, I got the pints. And I'm carrying all 3 of them around like this, and I'm just carrying them over to the table then. And so I carried them over, and the British bloke, he looks at me and goes, you can tell he's Irish, you can tell he's Scottish, can't you? It was like they used to call me Pint Boy back in the day. And so halfway through the evening, he got up to use the bathroom, and I looked at the girl I was dating, and I was like, should I switch to Irish? She was like, yeah, switch to Irish. So I switched to Irish, and I basically just started like talking like Tyler for the rest of the evening. Bill comes back. Can't I fucking hair me? He's thinking that I'm still taking Scottish. No, I switched again. That's what it is. And so he's thinking this whole evening, while I'm sitting there talking about Irish, and I get up to use the restroom later on in the evening as we're playing another game. He looks at the girl I was dating and he goes, is there something I'm missing here? What, like, where are you from, actually? And so then I said, well, the thing is that ich kann viele mehr Sprache kann. And he says, you're German. He says, he says, was that Russian? That's bullshit, actually. I can't actually speak Russian, but I can, I emote like it's Russian.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I said, no, I'm actually from Poland. I finally broke it. I'm like, okay, I can't dig this hole any deeper. I gotta break it off at some point. And he just put his hands to his face. He's like, you had me sold for the entire England. I'm like, I switched to Irish and you didn't pick it up. Motherfucker, you're from England. So that's and then over time, I started picking up more of them. Like my favorite one to do is Little Homer. I do a bit of Homer Simpson.
Would you say this from ear? You're hearing the sound in your.
Yes, I hear the sound and I try to figure out what it takes to be like that.
Homer, you really shouldn't do that in front of your company. You're really gonna scare them a lot.
Whenever games small roles I did in high school or in community theater, it would always be my physical inflections that would give me roles.
Yes.
Where I'm more of a physical guy than ever.
More stage actor, yes.
Where I suppose that if I was being in a LARP setting, I could do more to convey characters.
Yes.
Because with Nozomi, because that's a guy that's from Japan in the very late 1800s.
Yeah. This one's up on it's an old.
But I'm trying my best to do what the real Japanese accent is supposed to sound like. Where you have, I'm using Yakuza 8 as my reference right here. You have Officer Hat, I've been robbed. It's heard about the money. And he pointed a gun right at me.
Yes.
You want to be you want your teeth to touch as little as possible.
Yeah.
Whenever you do that kind of voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been trying to find different interviews where I've been looking up any sort of instance of Takashi Miike speaking English.
Yes.
Where he has a whole situation where he's going, but you meet him in character in No More Heroes 2.
Mm-hmm.
He's going, is this Bishop's grave?
Right.
We never met in person, but we exchanged married letters. You gave me courage.
This is the one thing I'm jealous of you guys.
Yeah.
I can't do voices like you guys can.
It's very difficult
But
to do it.
the thing is, Ryan, when you do characters, it's your actions in the game that sell the character.
Yes.
It's
That's because the way I get into character, whereas Johnny has his
emotion, his
yeah.
emotating.
You have your
Voices,
your
yeah.
voices. I have the mentality. I switch up the way I think to be like the characters.
Because even when I speak a sense of word, I curl my fingers while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is that the fact that you can just effortlessly place yourself into the mind of the character is.
I wouldn't say effortlessly. It does take a lot.
But that's something I really struggle with, and why I play so many static characters, because I really struggle to do that.
Yeah.
You're selling the performance first and foremost.
I am, and so that's why I like the villain. I'm gonna be honest. So far, the only really compelling villain I've been able to pull off, Matt Greiner was close, but because he wasn't strong enough to do it, then I couldn't be Matt Greiner.
Yes.
But I had the idea of his villain character down. It was so good, but I fucked it up by not making him good enough.
And then the whole shtick behind Insta became a man versus self kind of conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I played that just one random Pentax executive whose name I forgot because I didn't plan to have a name
Patrick
for it.
Mahomes or something like that.
Something like that.
It's not that name, but something along the lines.
But when I played him and had him be just the smarmy asshole who's oh, I already know who you are, and I've already called the cops, and you have a limited time to figure this out.
I was waiting for you to say something to the point that it would drive Insta over the line.
I was thinking about that. I'm like, please, cause a scene. I dare you.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to get at, but I couldn't quite get there.
And I remember a guy who pops up in our comments a lot, Rafu, was saying the whole scene where Insta was talking with the Boy Scout troop. That was the most tense scene we've had in the game so far.
Everybody seems to want to kill you.
Yes.
That's one thing I've noticed reading the comments. Everybody wants to kill
They really
Enz.
don't like Enz. But Enz is a great character, and I'll stand by that.
She really is.
When I designed her, whenever it came to you doing storyteller versus player, where I knew that you were going to have some struggles with storytelling because this was going to be your first time.
Yep.
That in-story was specifically designed to cause drama.
Yep.
Is why I made her.
So I could get used to fucking murder hobo in my goddamn party.
And then, even if gears switch to be Route the Storm, depending on which way that game might go down.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Route the Storm is still going to have attention there because this is a guy that's looking at everything the party does, and anything you do, he will go to authorities and tell them about
exactly.
that. Where you can't get away with anything if he's in the party with you.
Exactly. Yeah. So Wrath is interesting in that section there because he is going to act as another hurdle for if ends the road, just a lighter way out of that.
If I bomb the interrogation.
Yeah. Well, no, if you bomb the interrogation, then Wrath the Storm becomes your character up until we get to Chattanooga.
Yes.
Yeah.
At which point it'll be up to the character. It'll be up to the rest of the party to testify in her defense.
And then, say, the execution arc begins.
Well, not necessarily execution, but we'll see how that comes, because if that's the case, it's not to the if Ends the Road fails that check, and she gets, they can't just have, they can't just shoot her.
It's the Shadow Lords use your imagination.
They can't just shoot her out back like Old Yeller. They gotta okay, we have laws, we gotta take her to a cairn, we have to try her there.
It's the whole thing with the Shadow Lords where if you're going to be...
Exactly.
If the Shadow Lords are going to be sticklers about doing things by the book, they themselves have to do this by the book.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because the minute they step out of line, everyone's going to call them out on it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you have a stick up your ass.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the problem with being a spy, is that it's like in George Orwell's 1984 when Winston was talking. What was her name? Julia, right?
Yes.
Winston was talking with Julia, and he started volunteering for stuff so he could get away with more. It's like, if you follow the little rules, they won't mind if you break the big rules.
Yes.
But the Shadow Lords, the opposite, is okay, follow the big rules so you can get away with all the little ticky-tacky stuff other people will recognize.
Yes, it's that public image is what matters the most to them.
Exactly. So it's okay, we had this pack member that did something wrong, we're going to take them off. We might rough them up a little bit on the way there. Yeah. But we're going to take them off to this other cairn, and we're going to have a camp elder try them as they should. Which is what would happen if Ends the Road fails that check. And I'm going to spoil that right now because that's pretty blatant.
That depending how it goes down, where if in the event that Wrath does swap out Ends in the for that Charlotte segment,
you will have a much greater chance of getting through Charlotte.
And then the whole relationships they would have would switch, where Wrath is looking at Philodox and at your Philodox Leafs and saying, "This is a failure that should have stepped in and been the big dog, but he's failed every turn."
Yep.
Where you should have brought this pack to heel by this point. But the Bonar, on the other hand, look,
I have a feeling he would hate.
Storm's gonna hate this shit.
Yeah, because I said, someone said, he's only a Philodox in name.
Yes.
I see what you're trying to do here. You're trying to help out your folks over here with the Bonars. You see, I'm a man of people myself. I understand where you're coming from, but there are a few things you could be doing better. Let me show you how this is supposed to be done.
That's perfect for Storm's character, and if Ends the Road gets shipped off, then Storm will take over for the Charlotte arc, and we'll say that right now.
Yeah, because the whole shit with the Shadow Lords too is that they're werewolves that pretend to be vampires.
Basically,
that's how you play as them.
That's why I'm excited for the Charlotte arc.
Yeah.
So, speaking of character arcs, do you plan them from the start, or do you let them evolve into what they are?
It depends on the character. If I'm new to a setting, then I've sort of got an idea of of course the primary, especially in TCRPG, the primary prerogative of the character is to survive.
Yes.
Because if you survive self-preservation is very high on the list of priorities. Mm-hmm. But following the character arc is always the second, if not on par with survival instinct, because the whole point of a character is for it to have a story in mind. Mm-hmm. Granted, my character motivations are usually very simple, because when I write it, me and a friend of mine, Kaylee, who I've been friends with for a very long time, when she writes her character, she's this very long, drawn-out backstory for it.
She's shown me her character profiles too, where I look at some of the stuff and I begin to wonder, is this ever going to come at the end in the story?
Exactly.
But it's still good that you make it, because in the event that it does come up, you can use that.
Exactly. So, for me, I try to keep my character motivations as simple as possible so I can apply that to the story and make it a little bit easier for the storyteller to build a story with that in mind. Because you build a friggin', 14-page manuscript about your whole family's history. Storyteller doesn't have that kind of fucking time. I certainly don't. I struggle with just telling a regular story as it is. So...
let me show you an example of the character sheet that I use.
It's like a nice... That's actually a very pretty...
That's Hirohiko Araki's character sheet for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
That makes a lot of sense.
Where whenever you go into this, where I have it planned out, but I don't always use it.
Yeah.
But I don't always use that for every character
I remember we did this when we started the Santo Huerto, which I remember we started doing that. Saint's Garden was the name of that project.
Yes.
I
did that with what's eventually going to be Nozomi Nishiyama when it comes to Mega Drive.
That, I think, helped us both out a lot because that project there helped develop the modern iteration of Colt, which needed to happen.
Along with establishing what your character has been through that decides who they are in modern day.
Exactly. That's what helped build a static.
The backstory doesn't always make the character, but it serves to prop up the character for what they eventually turn into as the story goes along.
Basically, yeah.
Or one of my big examples for that. I don't want to call him Carl Winslow because that's not who he is in Die Hard.
Exactly. No.
That's it.
But yeah, so for
who is it? Reginald Vell Johnson became known best known for Sergeant Al Powell. Al Powell, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Where he could have been a character in and of himself, and that would have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole scene he has with John McClane in Die Hard, where he's saying, "The reason I stepped down from this role is because I shot a kid."
Yep.
And that's haunted me ever since then.
Exactly.
That does so much more for his character. So when he eventually does nut up and shoots the guy at the end of the movie, it means so much more when he does that.
Yep.
And exactly. You have a complete story after that, where we did not need to see every bit of his character, and that one sentence was enough to establish that character trope.
Yep.
And then it set up for that payoff that you saw.
Exactly. But yeah, so for when it comes to building a character and having a story in mind for them, I do have a vague idea. The thing is that it's a lot different in writing a story because as the writer, you're going to know the beginning, the middle, and the end because you're in charge of the story, you're in charge of the direction it takes. You know where they're going to start, where they're going to end. For a TTRPG, it's a lot harder, especially for the storyteller. So I just try to give the storyteller, here's where they start, here's what happened to them prior to the game starting, and here's what they want. Mm-hmm. If they get there or not is up to how the story goes and up to the actions of the character. Mm-hmm. And it's up to the storyteller to know whether or not how the player's character goes about it is going to determine if they actually reach that end goal. Because, for example, in Curse of Strahd, I'm playing as Marcus again in that, and he isn't a Horizon Walker like he was in Spelljammer. Yeah. He is an artificer fighter. He just has a simple life as a smithy. He married a noblewoman's daughter because he was in love with her, and he worked for his armory, and his wife and his son was killed by Strahd, so he's out for revenge. Yes. Cut, clean, dry, done. Simple motivation. What are you going to do to go out and do it? And that's the good way to go out and do it because your backstory has enough to get the character invested in the story and also gives them a tangible end of the story to write. Because if Marcus goes through all of Curse of Strahd and kills Strahd, he's like, okay, cool, I got my vengeance. Now my wife and son can rest easy. What the fuck am I supposed to do now? Yes. And that leaves a blank slate for if he wants to get sucked into another adventure. And that carried on in Miami, or not Miami, I keep saying Miami by night.
Appalachia?
Not Appalachia, no, Las Vegas by night.
Las Vegas by night.
Because Colt was like, okay, I was captured, I was turned against my will, my family's still out there somewhere, I want to find my family.
Yes.
Cut, clean, dry, done. What am I going to do to find my family?
And then part of World Darkness is that you're never supposed to have a concrete happy ending unless the game is changing the dreaming.
Yes.
Basically. Somehow I managed to carve that out, but only on a circumstance.
But you got half of what you wanted, where your family unit is back, but you need to find a way to get your son's soul out of Ragnar.
Yeah.
That happened in New York. But
and then find a way you can live a life with Catherine.
Well, we got there, and then Freddie left to go on a tour, and I'm like, okay, cool, he's on a tour, supposed to do. Yeah. Got caught up in New York, and I'm like, fuck, you're gonna come out of retirement again, god damn it!
And you didn't even get to do that, Ragnar had to come in and save you.
Yeah.
And part of that with Colt, too, was part of the arc was him relying less on himself and more on other people.
Yeah.
Too, because you clung to Ragnar in that game like nothing else.
Because he was my ballast, because Ragnar was. I love the dynamic between those two, especially because they're equal opposites. Colt's a veteran; he's been through a lot because
And then compare the amount of wars that Ragnar had been through, where
he's been through all of them.
The French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, where he always thinks it's going to be the same kind of glory as the American Revolution, and it never is.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he finds out the Brujah are just a snake eating its own tail, where You just rebel.
Yeah.
You just rebel. You just fight for the sake of violence.
That's the part of the reason I love it, is like, Colt is an old man who's an old man. He's an old veteran, he's tired, he's worn out, he doesn't want to do this anymore.
Well, meanwhile, Ragnar was embraced in his 20s.
He was embraced in his 20s. He's a young man who's always been in a young man's world, and always been in a young man's life. He's always had a young man's ambition.
Yeah.
And he can't let it go because he's a young man by heart.
Like
it's who he is.
Like that fight is just in his nature.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Part of his age and part of being a brew hopper.
And so then you have like Colt to level him out, like, hold up, you're gonna do something fucking stupid, and Ragnar like, get off your ass and fucking do something.
Yeah.
And then like over the course of the story where Colt gets out of the game entirely at the end of and at the end of Las Vegas and at the end of New York.
He's like, okay, no, this is way out of my depth. I don't want to be here anymore.
Well, meanwhile, Ragnar continued with personal improvement.
He did.
Where it got to the point where he got vicissitude from Vigo, and then got to the point where he was both the Flash and Spider-Man at the same time.
Exactly. And I was just like, okay, I have enough to survive. I want to get my family back together. That's all I care about. I've done everything I need to.
That's all you need.
Yep.
And
Sylvester was like, okay, I'm going to fight him and then manage to survive somehow. And I am praying one day for a return to New York where me and him can be buddies again and just be like,
it was,
let's go.
I do what I'm told, and then it was, hey, I'm on my own. I can do whatever the fuck I want to.
Yep.
Yeah.
This guy's fucking my shit up, and I'm going to take care of him.
And then I'll ask one more question, then Ryan asks one more question.
Okay.
Now, how much do you collaborate with the DM when it comes to making characters?
when it comes to
because, like, for example, I told you what I was going to do with Inzora before we started.
Yes.
Where I established that she's responsible for this mass killing in Canada that, as of the time, like 1998, when your story takes place, that would have been their biggest mass killing.
Yes.
Like 18 people with one weapon.
In a steakhouse with like 2 AK-47s. Who the fuck does that? It's scary as shit. Find her, kill her.
And that she's wanted internationally for this because they're still looking for her face.
Which is why I've made so many of those road checks. By the way, if you guys fuck that up, get stopped by the cop.
Which I did.
Yes. Thank God for Siddhartha.
She's on like the same level of infamy as Osama bin Laden.
But because she was in lupus form, they didn't see her.
And then with Nozomi Nishiyama, where we get to win that game, he was embraced in 1866.
Yes.
During the Bakumatsu period.
Nobody's going to fucking know who he is.
And the whole Church of Set did this whole thing where they said, hey, you're part of this very traditional Japanese family.
Yep.
And then the Church of Set, doing what the Church of Set does, you corrupt the individual, then you embrace him. Where they said, all right, we're going to have you start wearing countercultural, we're going to have you wear your hair down loose and long, we'll have you gain weight to go against Japanese beauty standards for men.
Yep.
We'll have you slowly become disenfranchised with Japan as a culture. Then we embrace you. And then that becomes solidified with him and his one night with Big Mona, where he becomes absolutely smitten with this woman from North Africa.
Yep.
Where that spits in the face of where him being the child of a shogunate, where they want him to marry a Yamato Nadeshiko, the very traditional Japanese thin, slim, and trim woman that you sat in the face of when you married a woman that was outside of that race.
Yes.
And then that's why led to him becoming a Setite, and by that point he's been with the Church of Set for 120 years.
And he gets disenfranchised with the Church of Set, realizes, like, I'm just in it for, like, the fun. This whole religious bent is bullshit.
Because he begins to look at the religious people around him and saying, I know how to worship Set better than you do.
Yep.
You're getting involved in all the sexual degeneracy. I'm out here corrupting people. So I'm going to go off and I'm going to break off from the church.
Yep.
And then, like, it's this whole denominational dispute that establishes his character.
Yeah, he breaks away from the dogma. But I think just for the sake of the DM, especially now that I know how hard it is to DM, I mean, I know I said before that DMing is easy. It really depends on your mentality.
Yeah.
Me, I don't think I'm built for it, but I'm doing it now, so I may as well.
And same thing whenever, like, other players have approached me when I was running games, too, because Victor had a ton of stuff planned for Mage 1936. And I told him, okay, this is a bit much.
Yes.
Let's tone this back a little bit.
Yep.
Where, like, your connection to Herman Goering is still going to be a thing in this game.
Yes.
But it's not going to go in the direction that you're expecting.
Yes.
And then me tooling with it, too, because it started off with him being an Aetheryte first and foremost. Then I negotiated with him to make him a progenitor first.
Yep.
And then he leaves the Tenocracy and becomes a son of Aether as the game goes on.
Yes.
Where and in a way that will allow him to keep his paradigm intact.
Oh yeah.
And then as that game goes on, and same with Grudy Kaminsky, where you being an OSS agent, like the preliminary to the IAA and the CIA in your game.
Yes.
Where we are yet to run Grudy Kaminsky.
No.
But I said do not plan too much with him.
Because he's going to fucking die.
Because it's not going to go the way you think it is.
Yeah.
And this is a Mage Ascension where anything is on the table as long as Paradox doesn't come to bite you in the ass.
Yep. Yeah. So that's what I'm excited about for that. But yeah, definitely whenever it's building a character, it's always, you always have to keep the DM in mind. I understand that like there's always the joke of when you run a game, you have to be willing to let people trample on your ideas. Mm-hmm. And it's funny that there's a connection between DMing and writing music, because when you're writing music, you can't get married to what's in your head.
Yes.
You have to make room for everybody else's ideas. You have to make room for the character slots. And it's more of guidelines when you're running a game, because you have to look at a character and look at somebody's ideas and be able to, sort of condense their ideas but still keep the character invested and keep them excited about what could potentially change from their original ideas.
Yeah.
You have to make the ideas that you propose exciting to the character without destroying the original idea of it. And that's what I feel makes a really good DM, is being able to sort of balance the player's expectations with your ideas for the story. It's something that so far everybody else in Appalachia's done a phenomenal job of, and I thank you so much for it.
Like you come in, you lay down like what the game was going to be before the first session starts.
Exactly. I feel bad because in both of your games and any game I play, I don't start thinking about the character until session 0.
Yeah.
No, but in all honesty, that sure you might not think about it then, but in a way that also helps because it's a blank slate. That also helps you adapt to the game a little bit more, which means there's less to go. And if you come up with an idea on the fly, it's a little bit easier to bend that into the game's framework.
And where you're going with Code to 1936, where you've spent most of your time in a pocket realm within a Hermetic society.
Yeah.
And you have very little knowledge of the world around you, where the Order of Hermes was your life. So when that slowly becomes taken away from you as the game goes on, you're a fish completely out of water.
I completely forgot my character's name was Kurt.
Yes.
It's okay.
You've got the whole mechanics involved with it.
Yeah, I went solely into the mechanics this time. I was like, this.
Yep.
But like even with Disco by Night, where running this game, the background is from Cool World, but I told them that this is going to be a political thriller first. Do not make a combat build.
Yes.
And I said, I would highly de-incentivize you playing a Bruja or Tremere or Anasamite or anything directly related to combat. And we had a rapper's in that game.
Yes.
And he's playing a La Sombra where he put points in Protean, but not Protean, Potence.
Yes. Yeah.
But he has just as many points in Dominate.
Right.
For that game. And same thing with Dan in that game, where he's put 5 points in Presence, where he maxed out Presence as soon as he could, then went into Celerity.
Yep.
And the only combat character we have in a game is Mr. Graves, who's played by Greed, who is a blood brother. So yeah, 2 10-year-old boys in a 40-year-old man's body.
Yep.
And there's a lot of baggage to unpack with that.
Yeah.
But he's done an equal balance with all of his disciplines, and his whole character arc is, I'm a guy that was made for war, adapting for an environment where there is no longer a war.
Yep.
How am I going to fit in here?
Exactly. Yeah, that makes it an interesting character, because it's very much in the court of the players it is on the DM, but it's also a good relationship between the player and the DM to set those boundaries in order to make a compelling story at the end of the day.
And he's learning the hard way, what's expected of him as a member of the Sabbat.
Yes.
Because he made a deal with Giovanni that was not his place to do, and he had a tongue lashing from the elders after making that plan.
Yes.
Where you should not have done that without consulting us first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just learning the hard way.
In all honesty, it's the mechanics of Miami by Night that's going to scare me, because Rapper's playing a
Caitiff, and I told him
he's playing a Caitiff, and he sent me the discipline he's built for it. Yeah. That's going to be so fucking busted.
And I told him when he's running the character, do not tell anyone you're Kadef.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because the minute that the Kimberl finds out about that, you're dead. If the minute the Sabbat finds out about that, you're either dead or they're going to forcibly conform you to the Panders.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if the Anarchs find out about that, they will not care until you become a problem for them.
Yep. So that's actually good to know because that means if he uses that discipline he's built for himself in front of anybody, they're going to kill him.
Like even amongst the other players too.
Yep.
Because even with Nozomi Nishiyama in that game, he still has some loyalty to the idea of Sid as a religion.
Yes.
So that's going to be conflict for him when he finds out that he's a Kadef.
Yeah, so that is what I'm excited about at Miami, is that sort of secrecy that he has. But I'm also I'm very excited for your character because I was sold on
Ravnos Pirate.
I was sold on the Ravnos as soon as we did the episode on my. Yeah. These guys are just fucking trolls of vampire. I am so pumped for that.
Now, is he a gypsy in that game?
I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I don't know.
like I said, I won't know that until session 0 rolls up.
Shit.
And then Sean's playing as Dimitri, and that can go anyway.
No, I know the kind of character that Sean's gonna play because he said it was similar to when he played Vega in the Street Fighter game.
Yeah.
I love when Sean plays just like a posh, cosmopolitan, charismatic enemy.
Straight up villain.
I love that. That's the part of the reason I love Vigo so much.
It's his answer to Vigo is what he's doing.
It really is, but you know what? I'm here for it. It's so much fun. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about a lot of things today. And one of the main things that we talked about was a lot of conflict between players, internal and external. So,
yes.
My question to you is, how do you balance that internal and external conflict?
Oh, that's a hard thing. I mean, in all honesty, it's so much easier to do the internal monologue of a character because, like, I do it with Ends of the Road all the time.
Yeah.
I only started doing it with Autumn Leaves. I haven't gotten to do it with Cleft all that much, and I really want to do it more with Siddhartha.
That's something I did with Dan when I did Disco by Night.
Yeah.
Where I set him on a character arc of being taken seriously.
Yes.
Because he's done so much for Sabbat and he's still at the rank he is.
Yes.
And I pointed that out to him in the middle of the session.
Yep.
And then that became the focus of his character for the next couple of sessions.
I did something similar with Siddhartha, like earlier in the game, where it was like that whole. I did like a bunch of dream sequences where it was you fighting.
It's Tube Steak.
You fighting Tube Steak in the first dream, and then Jen getting nearly killed by a random Pentex op that showed up to her door.
Foreshadowing?
And then there was the other one where Siddhartha got on stage, drank a rum and coke, rocked the show with Jen on stage, and then came to the realization
Michael Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. Came to the realization.
Yeah, Jackal Maxon.
Yes, and then came to the realization because that was a whole part of the Siddhartha mythology that Cho was talking to me about, and I'm like, that played really good into his character. Now he's saying that ends the road sort of dip into depression is going to help develop his character instead. And because the whole Charlotte arc is going to be a very, diplomatic and introspective game, I'm excited to see how that plays out. Just because, I would love to build more introspection with this party. But I think they develop enough drama amongst themselves where it helps write the story. Yes, it helps write the story for me. So it's really not between me against the players as much as it is the players against themselves. It's a lot of the things with zombies, in all honesty, in horror movies. Yeah. Because who is it that always causes the trouble? As far back as, say, exactly George Romero's Night of the Living Dead.
Yes.
It's all of the different characters in the house, arguing, how are we going to get out of this alive? The tensions build, the pressure mounts, the hostility breeds, not between, the ponderous clawing fate at the door, but all the intelligent threats within the house.
And then you start seeing that in stuff like Dead Rising.
Exactly.
Where what became the main focus of that game was less the zombies and more the psychopaths you encounter.
Exactly. That's why they were the big bosses, because the zombies are just like a mindless, flesh-eating horde.
A force of death that's present for the entire game.
They did the same thing in Last of Us.
Exactly.
It wasn't, you could handle the zombies, or I forgot what they were called.
The clickers?
The walkers, yeah. You could handle the fungi-infested people. It was the regular people that you had no idea what was going to happen.
Exactly. See, the thing about an intelligent foe is that they're unpredictable.
Because what was the scariest part of that game?
Of that game?
Of
Yeah.
the last one?
Yes.
Of which one?
The first one. Not the second one, no, but the second one. let's be honest with ourselves here.
Honestly, the first time we entered town. When we, right after we met Bill, and we're driving away, and we first entered that whole thing, I thought that was going to play out completely different.
Yeah.
Yep. But it's funny that you get to the part where it's like you're with Bill, and you're with like somebody, a named character, and you're thinking, is this guy gonna kill me?
Yeah.
Because like everything, nothing else in the world has given you any idea that
he's so weird. That
Exactly.
He's so hard to understand. Like, get your head around.
nothing else in the world has given you any idea that the people are any more worthy of trust than anything else that could possibly kill you.
For me, the scariest part of that game was David. Like the guy that you encountered at the very end of that game.
Yeah.
And it was because of how competent of a threat he was.
Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
he's the real final boss of that game.
Yep.
And you fight him as Ellie, you're not as strong as as Joel, for example.
Yeah.
And this guy, it's just you and him in a room. And if you can't figure him out before he figures you out, you're not going to win that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that was the most freaky part of that game for me.
I can understand that, yeah.
And I do love parts in horror games where like they sort of strip you down and make you like the weaker player.
Yes.
Where you have to use things that you usually wouldn't think of to do in a horror game in order to bend the mechanics to your advantage. And that's the part of DMing that I really struggle with. But I think Charlotte may be a turning point for that because I realized how much focus I put on combat in the front half of the game.
Yeah.
But I think introducing that one Pentex exec was sort of like a good microcosm, a litmus test for the rest of the party of how I should gauge the rest of the game.
Yes.
Because it's sort of like a build-up. It's like the first part is this, the second part is this, the third part is a mix between all three, and then a nice little boss rush to the end where it's like, you've done everything there is to do, you survived this far, now you get to push for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel like I'm structuring the game, and in everything there is balance. So I've leaned really heavily to one side on Appalachia, and I need to lean into the other side of the World of Darkness, which Rapid continues to tell me that Miami by Night is where I think I'm really going to come into my own. I have no idea because I don't know what I want to do for that game. But that's also what scares me.
That's also what I figured out too. Like vampire is much easier to run than werewolf.
Yes. Werewolf's a hard fucking game because
it's a war story first and foremost.
it is, but the problem with a war story as a TTRPG is that like players don't like to die when the whole idea is to get invested into a character.
Yes.
It doesn't make them feel good. It doesn't inspire confidence in themselves, the mechanics of the game, or the story themselves if the next character they make could be wiped out like that.
And I feel like that's the reason why so many World of Darkness players are so apprehensive towards Wraith the Oblivion.
Yes.
Because
Just World of Darkness in general.
Yes.
like in reality, like Wraith the Oblivion, you're not supposed to fight, period.
No.
And that should be a game where you hold on to your characters the longest. Because I can only name 2 powers in that game that are directly offensive.
Yes.
And the Wraith the Oblivion is drama first and foremost. But people are so... they have expectations of what Wraith is going to be. Where you expect that death rate, you expect a turnover rate, and that's what stops people from playing.
Yes.
Oh, it's like you said. Most people expect a unhappy ending in almost all, except for Changeling.
Yes. I feel like there should be a tier list on like the amount of like self-preservation required in each level of the game. Like, you know, you've got, you know...
We know what we're going to do next, and if we have to skip an episode.
The self-preservation tier list of World of Darkness games.
Like with Changing the Dreaming, you can become untouchable at character creation.
Yeah.
Because I was running Changing the Dreaming on Sundays, and I was struggling to think of combat counters after a certain...
I'm struggling to think of combat counters of werewolf.
If you think Insta is strong, you haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, go.
Give us some hunters, or some from Mori, even more from Mori.
Yeah.
Swarm us with from
Because I was telling
That's
you,
what I tried to do, and the other thing, I don't think I did a very good job.
that's part of the worm too, because the worm has stopped fighting in direct methods.
Yes.
Because the worm is trying to fight behind the scenes and indirect.
Yeah.
Where it's the same with combating a venture, because a venture's not going to meet you in the street with a gun. A venture's going to get your property foreclosed.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen.
A venture's going to pay off the cops to go, hey, this guy killed somebody and robbed a bank. You should go out and arrest them.
Yes.
Should we not just kill them? No. Arrest them. And make sure that there's a news crew there. Here, I've set up this bank robbery. They're going to be there in like 30 minutes. You probably go. I got this anonymous tip. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So that's like the kind of game they're going to play after that.
Yeah.
So it is a struggle when it comes to the conflict of what I want to give to the players versus what the players give to each other.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it goes back to how well do your players want to play with each other?
Yes.
How much do your players know each other's characters?
I will fuck with anyone.
And that's why I love having you on as Clef, bro.
I'm a mean, rough and tumble lupus. I'm gonna pet him.
Yeah, roll dodge check. Here we go.
I don't like you, Cleft. You know what? That's fine.
Yeah.
Good on you.
Just a nice guy.
That's it. We've been gone for almost like 2 hours. So
Yeah.
It's good.
Have we really?
Yeah.
Fuck, okay.
Yeah.
I need a glass of water.
Don't you have to get up at a crazy time?
7.
Yeah.
Yes.
We usually finish this at 11. I usually wake up at like 5.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. This is why I feel bad for hosting on a Sunday. But then again, I got
I'm doing this while my body can take the punishment.
Yeah, that's what it is.
All right.
Fuck DMing. It sucks.
I agree, but you were also pretty good at it.
I swear,
I'm sorry that I'm good at
the
it.
two of you can't tell good stories. It's just the mechanics is what trips you up.
No,
do you think you'd have an easier time doing this if we weren't recording?
In what?
If you would have an easier time running these games if we weren't recording them?
I could use licensed music.
No, it is.
That's the only benefit I would
That's
have.
all it is. Because you
Fuck
want
DMing. I hate this shit.
Because you want to play like Cell Dweller and Boost to Heal while we're doing these games.
I mean, yeah, it's 1998. There should be new metal in the soundtrack.
The butt rock is what you want to do.
I like butt rock. Fuck you.
There it is.
It's fun music. I want to play fun music when I'm playing a fun game. But don't.
Unironically enjoy that.
All the fucking time I take to make all these goddamn character sheets, to make all these fucking maps, to make all this fucking plot for them to inhabit. Fuck all of it. It sucks and I hate it.
I've asked you several times, do you want me to do some of this stuff for you?
No, because if I don't do it, then it's not going to be my shit.
Yeah.
And if I don't do my shit, then it's this.
I 100% understand.
I'm a man fully in conflict with this. I hate DMing, but I know if I'm not going to do it, nobody's going to do it.
We talked about internal and external.
This is an internal conflict right now. This is what the fuck's going on.
Conflicts with characters. We didn't talk about internal and external conflicts of you.
With the DM. No.
With the DM.
This is the DM being mean as a DM.
Because I told you were going to do a better job than me.
I don't know how I did it.
Yeah.
I'm only doing it because I'm good at writing. That's the only reason it's better.
In terms of stories, yes.
No, you're a better DM than me.
Because when it comes to making mechanics, yes. Well, I'm not obsessed with difficulty. Yeah, it is the case.
Fuck you. That's my final word for tonight.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Oh, shit.